So I often get the question that is, how do you build a brand? And well, I'm not going to tell you that because I charge for that kind of thing, okay? But what I am going to ask is a different question, which is, who can build a brand? And my contention is that it is increasingly difficult for any company enthralled to shareholder value, quarterly reporting, or anything of the kind to actually become a brand that, in the way that I like to put it, plays the game of capitalism on easy mode. Because they're optimized around doing only one thing, and that is that there's only one definition of what that purpose of the company is, and it has to follow that purpose to the beat of a completely arbitrary time frame, which is the financial quarter or the financial year. And there seems to be some sort of superpower that exists when you can free yourself from the constraints of a narrow financial quantification and actually make a variety of decisions for both the short term and the long term. And so I think most of the time we're asking the wrong question, which is, how do we build a brand? But I think the question to ask is, who can build a brand? Again, what are the conditions, that are necessary before someone can actually both survive and prosper in the short term while also innovating and adapting for the long term? And now many times I find that generally in life, just observing nature and being closer to nature, like going out on a hike, for example, typically provides the answers you need. But for the purpose of this question, I'd like to go back to the bee example that I gave in a previous article. Now, what bees effectively do all day is fetch pollen or nectar. And in order to do that, they follow something called the Waggle dance. And it's very efficient. So the bees do a little dance which describes the distance and direction at where pollen and nectar are to be found. And lots of the other bees then obediently follow the instructions and go off and harvest the pre-existing known sources of nectar and pollen. Okay, great. And there's nothing wrong with that. And the accountants would love it because, simple cost-benefit analysis, cost of collection versus value of energy retrieved. So we can measure this effectively. We can measure it in the short term. You can even measure it at the level of the individual bee, and you can even measure it at the level, and everything's accountable and predictable, and you can look at it at the granular level, and you can optimize efficiency a bit, wonderful. However, what scientists discovered when they studied this in more detail is that around 20% of the bees ignore the Waggle dance and basically appear to piss off at random. And so now what's interesting about this is that bees have been around for 20 million years, and evolution detests waste. So why would evolution tolerate this level of waste in a system that's basically persisted for 20 million years? And you would imagine that at this stage, evolution should have produced sort of like bee compliance officers that demand that everybody adheres to the Waggle dance so that they can hit their quarterly target for pollen collection for Q3 or whatever it might be. But then they looked at it as a complex system, in fact, and realized that if you don't have the rogue bees or the random bees, the hive gets trapped in a local maximum and it starves to death. In other words, it gets over-optimized on the past. So the hive will then become preoccupied in harvesting sources of pollen that it knows about and completely underinvests in discovering new fields where flowers may have come into bloom, or in other words, new opportunities. And this, by the way, is wrongly, I think, as seen as the exploit trade-off. And I don't think it's a trade-off at all. I think it's our modern mindset that sees it as such, because we are inclined to see two different activities as automatically being in conflict. So you can't afford to explore if you're not good at exploiting. But if you don't explore, you don't know what to exploit. With exploit, you have uncertainty is low, focus is on efficiency and growth. The financial philosophy is a safe haven with steady returns and dividends. The culture and processes are very linear. So it's linear execution, embracing planning, predictability, and minimal failure. And the people and skills are more skewed towards managers who are strong at organizing and planning, while the explore is high on uncertainty. The search and breakthrough is the focus. The financial philosophy is many small bets, expecting few outsized winners. And the culture and process is actually iterative experimentation, embracing speed, failure, and learning, and rapid adaptation. And people and skills are more on the explorer side, who excel in uncertainty. So explore, that's the marketing or branding department. And these are the fuckers you have to deal with every day. Okay, very brutally put. So fundamentally, the explore part is probabilistic, not deterministic. It focuses on opportunity rather than efficiency, abundance versus scarcity, positive sum versus trade-offs. It's relational, not transactional. I could go on. And similarly, to put this into a more relatable context, if you look back at your own career, 10% of what you did really contributed about 90% of the value. And you only realize this in hindsight because we're always busy with what seems important at the time. But when you look back on it, 3 or 4 decisions really that you made all the difference. And so most of business really is probabilistic. And the most effort in business is unfortunately devoted to pretending that it isn't. Okay. So whilst you may or may not have an excellent marketing engine, my point here is to dare to explore. And I think there's this whole role in marketing of going through auditing the marketing engine and the brand, and more importantly, the customer journey, and simply asking the question, what are we missing?